Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to our latest explainer, where we're going to break down the rapidly shifting landscape of enterprise virtualization. Look, if you manage a data center today, you know the ground beneath our feet is moving. We're going to use deep architectural data and market research to unpack the current showdown in the infrastructure world, Nutanix versus VMware.
3x to 10x. Let that sink in for a second. That is the massive renewal quote increase some customers have reported seeing since Broadcom acquired VMware. It's a staggering jump, and it has IT leaders everywhere literally hitting pause and reevaluating their entire virtualization strategy.
So, here is how we're going to break this all down today. We'll start with a virtualization market shakeup, then look at architecture, layered versus unified. After that, we'll hit the cost multiplier effect, availability versus operational authority, ecosystem depth versus simplicity, and finally, your migration path forward.
All right, Section 1, the virtualization market shakeup.
So, Broadcom has fundamentally pivoted the VMware ecosystem. They've dropped perpetual licenses entirely in favor of subscriptions, and they've consolidated dozens of standalone products into these all-or-nothing bundles, like VMware Cloud Foundation. They also imposed a 72-core minimum licensing threshold and completely overhauled the partner and support network. Now, we are neutrally reporting this based on the source data, but the undeniable reality here is that these changes have forced companies into rigid licensing models, which is sparking a huge, widespread search for alternatives.
And the scale of this market reaction, it is massive. Analyst data from Gartner estimates that over a third, 35% of all VMware workloads could actually move to alternative platforms by 2028. To put that into perspective, we're talking about a potential shift involving up to 140,000 customers. Evaluating alternatives is no longer just some fringe activity, It is a mainstream enterprise priority. And for a lot of folks, that evaluation leads straight to Nutanix.
Moving on to Section 2, architecture, layered versus unified.
Think about the traditional VMware stack for a moment. It is deeply integrated, sure, but heavily layered. You've got the ESXi hypervisor, vCenter for management, NSX for networking, and vSAN for storage. It's powerful, but it's fundamentally built from distinct, separate components. Now, contrast this with the Nutanix stack. It's built from the absolute ground up as a single, unified, hyper-converged engine. The AHV hypervisor, Prism management, Flow, and AOS storage all operate as one cohesive platform. You don't have to bolt these pieces together, they're just inherently unified.
And this architecture translates directly into some serious performance advantages. A huge differentiator is how Nutanix handles data locality. Because it's a unified infrastructure, Nutanix natively optimizes I/O performance by keeping compute and storage on the exact same node. Traditional setups, including many VMware configurations, often distribute this traffic across the network, which, as we know, introduces latency. This data locality is just a massive, built-in advantage for Nutanix.
Next up, Section 3, the cost multiplier effect.
Okay, I want to walk you through this shocking math, because this is wild. Under Broadcom's new core-based licensing, modernizing your silicon actually multiplies your software costs way faster than your performance. Say you upgrade a server from 16 to 64 cores. You might see about a 1.8x increase in compute performance. But because VMware licensing is now tied to core density, your subscription cost for that exact same server can jump by 4x. Upgrading your hardware literally penalizes you on the software side.
This perfectly illustrates two fundamentally different pricing paradigms that are dictating long-term data center economics right now. VMware relies on core-based pricing, tying licensing to silicon density. Nutanix, however, utilizes capacity-based pricing. And this is a huge advantage for them because it completely decouples your hardware growth from your software costs. Nutanix focuses on your usable footprint. That means you can upgrade to dense, modern processors without triggering an immediate massive software tax penalty.
Which brings us to Section 4, availability versus operational authority.
To really understand this profound architectural shift, we first need to define something called control plane dependency. In modern environments, outages rarely start because a hard drive fails. They happen when management layers collapse. We're talking about things like your Active Directory identity providers, your API trust chains, or your orchestration systems. The hardware itself is fine, but the control mechanisms, completely broken down.
And that leads to this incredibly powerful quote from our sources. It totally reframes how we must think about platform reliability. The real question is no longer which platform keeps workloads running. It is now which platform still works when the control plane breaks. This is the exact moment where the architectures of VMware and Nutanix diverge dramatically.
So let's impartially compare this trade-off.
VMware operates on layered dependency. It offers incredible ecosystem flexibility, for sure. But if your external Active Directory or vCenter fails, you can actually be locked out of recovering your own running environment. Nutanix, by contrast, operates on localized authority. Administrative control and recovery functions remain available natively within the local cluster. Even if your external identity provider goes completely down, you still have the authority to manage and recover your Nutanix environment. It absolutely prioritizes operational survivability.
All right, Section 5, Ecosystem Depth versus Simplicity.
Now, to be completely fair, we have to acknowledge that VMware remains an unmatched powerhouse in certain areas. It has the absolute deepest third-party integration ecosystem on the market today. Its NSX microsegmentation is highly mature. It offers extensive fiber channel support, and obviously there is deep, widespread familiarity with vSphere across global IT teams. If you have a highly complex multi-vendor environment that relies heavily on legacy fiber channel or really niche third-party plugins, VMware's depth is an undeniable asset. But the market is shifting quickly, and Nutanix is actively closing that gap by opening up their architecture. Here's a pretty surprising fact. Nutanix breaks the old HCI-only rule. Through Nutanix Cloud Infrastructure Compute, they now support validated external arrays, like Pure Storage Flash Array, connected via NVMe/TCP. What you really need to take away from this is that migrating to Nutanix no longer forces you to just throw away all of your expensive external storage investments. You can keep your validated arrays while ditching the VMware hypervisor tax. Finally, Section 6, your migration path forward. For organizations practically handling this transition, getting the infrastructure right is more critical than ever. Just look at this stat. 83% of companies plan to repatriate some workloads from the public cloud back to private environments due to cost and performance predictability. Suddenly, getting your private on-prem infrastructure operating model right is priority number one again. You have got to have a solid foundation.
So, let's break down a logical, actionable three-step strategy to regain your leverage. Step 1. Constrain your risk by diversifying. Nutanix actually lets you run VMware ESXi and Nutanix AHV side by side as dual hypervisors, which lets you test the waters safely. Step 2. Build a unified platform that handles both legacy VMs and modern containerized apps seamlessly. And Step 3. When you are finally ready, migrate seamlessly using built-in tools like Nutanix Move, which handles the heavy lifting basically without downtime.
But a quick word of warning as we wrap up here. Migrations usually fail due to operational friction during the coexistence window. It's not the hypervisor physics that fail, it's the operational side. You must avoid managing a fragmented control plane, where your old and new environments are fighting each other. Don't just try to copy and paste your old ESXi workflows into Nutanix AHV. Embrace the simpler operations. Make sure you test your identity chain continuity and absolutely ensure that your third-party backup verification tools like Veeam actually work post-cutover.
Which brings us to our final thought. The rules of infrastructure have fundamentally changed. When the next major crisis hits your data center, will you just have availability, staring helplessly at running VMs you can't control? Or will you have authority, the localized power to actually recover your environment on your own terms? It's a provocative question, but it's exactly the architectural philosophy you need to ponder as you decide your path forward. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.